following is intended only for mature audiences.
Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, and it's just me. And I'm going to talk about something that you have probably heard a great deal about, and that is this 10-year-old girl in Ohio who was raped and got pregnant, and due to the Supreme Court's recent overturn of Roe v. Wade, had to go to neighboring Indiana to receive an abortion. Now, the Republican Party, who's pretty much the only people behind this overturn push, they denied the story at first as an effort by pro-choice activists to add fuel to the firestorm that has ensued after the overturned decision last month. And there's all kinds of high-profile Republicans that have put their feet in their mouth. It's fucking hilarious. Take, for instance, you've got Governor Mike DeWine's abortion ban that forced a child to travel to Indiana for care. And even though he's fine with the abortion ban and calls her situation gut-wrenching, but is still standing by the law. Now, earlier this month, the Indianapolis Star reported that a 10-year-old girl received an abortion in Indiana after she was raped. However, shortly after that report came out, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost, who is a colossal bagadoosh, he appeared on Fox News and disputed the story, saying that his office had not seen any evidence of the incident being true. And he is quoted as saying, "We have regular contact with prosecutors and local police and sheriffs, not a whisper anywhere." So he's already kind of politicizing this as more bullshit from the left to try to throw more gas on the fire of all the public outrage over the Roe v. Wade overturn. And then right after Yost makes those remarks, Brainchild Ohio Republican Representative Jim Jordan hops on Twitter in a tweet that he later deleted and said, "Another lie? Anyone surprised?" Yeah, and then, of course, a few days later, we all know that a 27-year-old illegal alien named Gerson Fuentes was arrested in connection with the 10-year-old's rape. That, of course, the quote from Yost coming from Newsweek, and then after the arraignment of the alleged rapist, which then proves that the shit was real, he's like, uh-oh, and he tweets out, "My heart aches for the pain suffered by this young child. I'm grateful for the diligent work of the Columbus Police Department in securing a confession and getting the rapist off the street." That comes from news periodical Indy 100. And a lot of people were kind of just asking questions. How does a 10-year-old even get pregnant? And if so, could a girl that young properly carry a baby to term? I did a little research on that. Lewis Wall is a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. He told Live Science, or maybe it's Live Science, I don't fucking know, the greatest danger is to the pelvic floor. Girls may start ovulating and menstruating as early as age 9, though the average is around 12 to 13. And just because a girl can get pregnant, though, doesn't mean she can safely deliver a baby. The pelvis does not fully widen until the late teens, meaning that young girls may not be able to push the baby through the birth canal. And then you've got Sherry Thomas, an OBGYN at Mission Community Hospital in Panorama City, California, piggybacking off of that. "The results are horrific," she said, talking about experience working with pregnant young girls in Africa. "The aftermath of the labors is devastating to the bodies of the girls. They may labor for days and many die, and the babies often don't survive labor either. The women and the girls who do survive often develop fistulas, which are holes between the vaginal wall and the rectum or bladder. So basically the head of the baby pushes down and gets stuck, and it cuts portions of the soft tissue between the holes there, and then all kinds of shit just starts leaking out of various places. It's gross. It requires surgery. If you're in a third world country, it's pretty much a life ender there because you develop sepsis or other various fucking bodily infections from having your poop come out of all the holes down there. So the tissue dies and a hole forms from all of this. And like I said, poo-poo and pee-pee leak through the hole and out of the vagina, which is gross. So let's just kind of take a second to digest everything that's going on in this story that I kind of rushed through. I want to get a lot of the quotes out first to kind of set the table. A 10-year-old girl was raped, and then she gets pregnant. And you would think that they would want to do something to help protect her health, but all that the majority of the pro-lifers want to say is, she needs to have that baby. Well, she should have the baby. The baby doesn't have a voice and needs to be brought to term. And there's various people, like spokespeople for Right to Life, which is some fucking pro-life, right-wing, conservative nutcase group. And they're just like, well, that baby is a gift from God, and she should have brought it to the world. And I just think that's fucking sickening. This is a child, dude. And you're so far up your own asses politically that you want to push for this to happen just to prove a point. Now, in terms of the fact that we've got midterms coming up and a lot of Republican seats are up for re-election, the story could not have come at a worse time for them, because it's like, oh, fuck. We don't want to seem insensitive, but we also don't want to be like, yay, abortion. So what do? Do we just sit here and not say shit? I don't know. People are asking questions. There's a lot of like fucking unease amongst these people that would normally be shaking their angry fist about the fact that an abortion happened. So it's funny as shit to me that they're forced to kind of be like, oh my God, what a terrible thing for this girl to go through. And you have to believe that a story like this is going to come out at some point, because it has to happen all the time. Not like children being raped and getting pregnant at such a young age that it almost defies most people's grasp of how science works. But rape being a known exception for anti-abortion states, some, I will say, what this girl went through is the exact type of reason why we need to have abortion readily available. She shouldn't have to go across state lines. And then you've got the fucking Attorney General of Indiana like, I'm going to look into the doctor who performed this procedure and try to get them in trouble because maybe this was a criminal act. And it's like, dude, what the fucking fuck is going on here? This is a kid that was raped. A sexual assault of a small child took place. And the unfathomable aftermath of her becoming pregnant with her assailant's child. Now, anybody that says, you raised the rape baby, it's a baby. Yeah, again, I'm just going to say 50% of your attacker's DNA, so it's a living, breathing reminder of your victimization. And furthermore, I didn't bring this up in the hard row to hoe episode when we talked about the possible overturn before the overturn happened. There are some states that will grant full parental rights to the father when he sues for it, even if he committed a rape to make the baby. Think about that. Not only do you fucking bring to term, or in this instance, possibly be forced to bring to term, the result of a rape. The child is a rape baby. That's just the terminology I use. And now you've got the father, who's the assailant, suing the victim to get time with that kid. How fucked up is that the court would even consider that shit? There should be no contact between that parent and that child until it reaches the age of 18 and then decides whether or not it wants to know who the fuck their father was. And yeah, it's shitty that a kid doesn't have a dad, but isn't having no dad better than having a rapist for a father? Like, imagine how those daddy-daughter dances are going to go. Like, oh, this is my dad. I'm alive because he raped my mom. And no one's probably going to lead with that. But it's just like all these specters of shame and darkness and victimization and negativity around this child's life right from the start. And I don't know how the hell you ever grow up to be a normal, emotionally adjusted human being coming from that situation. But yet again, the pro-lifers and the right-wing conservatives are screaming that she should have had to have this baby, even though there are people from the medical community saying, no, her body's not prepared for this. They talk about the widening of the hips once you hit a certain stage of puberty, and it's not till your mid to late teens. Okay, so we're talking about a 10-year-old that is basically still a baby herself, having a baby, and most likely having to undergo a cesarean to have that thing cleaved from her womb. How much more fucking victimization do you want to thrust upon this child? Oh my God, wouldn't it be more humane to just put a pillow over her face when she's sleeping at night and fucking end it right there with all the nonsense that these religious zealots and these pro-life extremists are trying to force? I mean, it's a kid. Think about it. If your daughter got raped and got pregnant, wouldn't you want to be like, okay, we should do something about this so that we don't have this little fucking oops baby with the rape existence in our family photos for the next God knows how many years, because that's going to be really awkward at Thanksgiving. But I wouldn't expect any of my daughters to go through that, because I would sack the fuck up and I would make sure that they were taken care of. But again, here we are with Roe v. Wade struck down. Now there's all this back and forth. She has to cross state lines. And then the attorney general of the state where it took place is like, oh my God, I want to get the doctor in trouble for this shit. Why? That doctor, she helped this girl. And you want to make her life hell. And it's just like, holy fucking shit. So the doctor, who's having her name slandered and shit upon in the media, sends a fucking cease and desist to this attorney general in Indiana, like, hey, fuck you. I did what I had to do, and I followed everything that my medical board license requires me to do. So look at this can of worms they've opened up with all of this shit. And then they're talking about walking back gay marriage next. Like, this is our new reality. We have right-wing conservatives that want us to have an authoritarian government where only what they believe is what we all, everyone, even those that don't go to church and believe in Jesus Christ and pull the lever for the fucking Republican candidates when we're in the voting booth, have to deal with their way of life. And that is not okay. That is bordering on Nazi Germany, for fuck's sakes. And everybody needs to wake the fuck up. Because if they're willing to try to force a 10-year-old rape victim to bring that baby to term, what the fuck are they going to do to the rest of us? Huh? Like, where do our own personal liberties and our own agency over our own bodies stop being our own and they control it? They're going to say what medicines we can take next? Whether or not you can have certain operations, like gender-affirming operations? Because it sounds like they want to control who we can marry. So if they don't want the gays to marry, are they going to make it so that blacks and whites can't marry too? Like, where does this end? And I'm not being facetious. This is not a straw man argument. This shit is very rapidly becoming reality, and it's frightening to live in, quote, the greatest country in the world and have all these, air quotes, freedoms that they're trying to fucking take away from us. This is not a matter of the government versus the doctor who performed this procedure. Okay, this is between this girl and her parents and the doctor. The only part that the government needs to be involved in is making sure that the doctor who performed it had a valid license, and then using its legal arm authority to prosecute the perpetrator of the sexual assault that got her pregnant in the first place. And they say he's undocumented. So now everybody's like, oh my God, it's because Biden let the borders get open. Like, don't fucking politicize this. This is already terrible enough that this happened to this girl. She's going to be known for this shit forever. People are going to figure out who she is. They're never going to let her forget it. She's going to be haunted by the trauma, but she's also going to have this specter of being, oh, you're the 10-year-old girl that had to go to Indiana to get a fucking abortion. Because in the state where you live, the government said no more abortions. Not even if it threatens your health, or not even if there's incest or rape. What the fuck? So now efforts are being made to try to attempt to codify Roe into law, because the whole crux of the overturn was it's unconstitutional to make it a federal right and take the powers away from the states. So now you've got some politicians trying to make sure that the right to abortion is thus given to everyone, enshrined in law, so that it's not having to be this circle jerk of constitutional argumentation in the Supreme Court or elsewhere. And I hope they do it, because unfortunately, they're also going after gay marriage, it sounds, like I've already said, and they're trying to codify the right to marry so that they don't have to go through this whole walking back of the gay marriage amendment, so that certain states are like, oh, guess what? We don't want to let the gays be married anymore. So, fuck you. And the story itself, as a father, it's so fucking troubling. I can't even believe the America that we're living in right now. I guess as a kid, I never would have thought that shit like this would come to pass, where the government on one side an entire party as a movement, like an army trying to force its will on a country it's invading, or almost like a coup over the whole government at all, is trying to force their will on us. This is supposed to be our country. You work for the people. And if the majority of the nation does not have a problem with abortion, then it stands to reason that democratically we should vote into law that abortion is legal, just like gay marriage, just like trans rights, and all these other fucking freedoms that they're trying to take away from us because they're trying to get us to bow at the altar of their God and their morals, and we don't all believe in the same shit. So stop representing your own interests and start representing the will of the people, you miserable self-righteous cunts. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It Podcast Show. For the What Do We Call It Podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.